In this video, we'll be discussing testicular tumors. Now, to understand what testicular tumors are, let us first look at the histology of the testis, so that we'll have some orientation as to where the tumor cells can arise from. Now, the testis has two basic types of cells. One is the germ cell, and the second is the supporting structures. The germ cells, as you can see here, you first have the spermatogonium. The spermatogonium, which forms the spermatocyte, which forms the spermatid, which then forms the spermatozoon. These are the germ cells, and you can also see in between these, you can see the cells of Sertoli. You can see the cells of Sertoli over here. These are supporting cells. The function of the cells of Sertoli is to give nourishment, to give nutrition to the spermatogonia, the spermatocytes, the spermatids, and the spermatozoon. You will also see certain cells called the Leydig cells. These Leydig cells, the function of these Leydig cells is to secrete testosterone. Now, testicular tumors are of two broad categories: the germ cell tumors and the interstitial tumors. The germ cell tumors have two broad categories: seminomas and non-seminomatous germ cell tumors. Now, it sounds very funny that one group is called seminoma and the other group is called non-seminomatous. This is because seminomas are before that, germ cell tumors are more common than the interstitial tumors, and among the germ cell tumors, seminomas are so common that they've been given the honorific title of being called by their name, whereas the other group is given the rather pejorative title of non-seminomatous germ cell tumors. This classification just indicates as to how common seminomas are. Seminomas have two broad types: anaplastic and spermatocytic seminoma. Non-seminomatous again have four types: embryonal, yolk sac tumors, choriocarcinoma, teratoma. The interstitial tumors can come from two cells. You have the Leydig cell tumors, and then you have the Sertoli cell tumors. The other structures which can form tumors are lymphomas and other tumors such as the smooth muscle or the vascular structures. Now, these testicular tumors are 1 to 1.5% of the male neoplasms. The incidence has increased in the past 30 years. This is probably a reflection of our changing lifestyle. The most common tumor, as I've already told, is seminoma. The best prognosis is seen in yolk sac tumor. The worst prognosis is seen in hurricane tumor, which is a type of choriocarcinoma. Now, the risk factors are cryptorchidism, which has the strongest association, and also higher the testis, greater is the risk of the undescended testis forming a tumor. Now, in the undescended testis, the most common tumor is seminoma. Seminoma is way more common than the embryonal carcinoma. Also, supposing a patient has a tumor in one testis, he has a very high risk of developing a tumor in the contralateral testis. A history of family history and a history of intratubular germ cell neoplasia. This intratubular is nothing but inside the seminiferous tubules. If in the seminiferous tubules there is a germ cell neoplasia, then those patients are at risk of developing a testicular tumor when they grow up. A history of in utero administration of diethylstilbestrol. Diethylstilbestrol is an estrogen which was earlier prescribed to women for various obstetric conditions. It is no longer given. But a woman who has taken diethylstilbestrol during pregnancy, and if she is carrying a male child, that male child has a risk of developing a testicular tumor when he grows up. Then we have Klinefelter syndrome, which is karyotype 47XXY. Then there is testicular feminization syndrome. The clinical features: these tumors are most commonly they present as a painless swelling. They also present as heaviness in the testis. So there is secondary hydrocele. The hydrocele is secondary to the testicular cancer, and even though it is painless, sometimes there can be pain. The cause of pain is usually a hemorrhage into the tumor or an infarction due to rapid tumor growth. Now, most of the seminomas are confined to the testis, and it is the non-seminomatous tumors which have widespread mets. These non-seminomatous germ cell tumors also may present with gynecomastia in a very small number of patients, but it can still be seen. Now, secondaries are seen in almost 10% of the patients. These patients will complain of acute pain. They complain of acute pain in the lumbar region, in the epigastrium. Now, this is because the testes are developing in the retroperitoneal region in the embryonic period. So they derive their blood supply, the venous drainage, the lymphatic drainage, everything from that part of the body and not from the scrotum. That is why these patients will complain of acute pain in the lumbar region, and epigastrium pain because of the presence of enlarged para-aortic lymph nodes. These para-aortic lymph nodes will present as a mass in the epigastrium. Supposing if these go to the lungs, you can get chest pain, dyspnea, hemoptysis. You can have CNS symptoms such as headache and seizures and bone pain. When you examine such patients, it is an intratesticular solid mass. This means that you cannot palpate the testis separately from the tumor. In a hydrocele, you can palpate the hydrocele and you can palpate the testis separately. In a primary hydrocele, it is slightly difficult to palpate the testis separately, but you can still palpate it. Whereas in a secondary hydrocele, you can palpate the hydrocele and you can palpate some other lesion. Now, this is a solid mass. Now, the epididymis becomes difficult to feel when it is flattened or incorporated into the growth. So, this means, now imagine this is the testis and this here is the epididymis. And this in red is the tumor. When this tumor grows, even if it does not invade the epididymis, it can become so big that it becomes incorporated into the growth. Now, it is noteworthy that the vas is never thickened. If you do a parietal examination, it is normal. Gynecomastia should be looked out for, and it is seen in 5% of the cases. Only in 2% cases, you will see a bilateral tumor. So, you have to always examine the contractile testis as well. Now, there is an aphorism in surgery which says all patients with a solid, firm intratesticular mass that cannot be transilluminated. Basically, he is trying to rule out the other swelling such as hydrocele, epididymal cyst, and spermatocele. So, any patient who has a solid, firm intratesticular mass which cannot be transilluminated should be regarded as malignant. Intratesticular means you cannot palpate the mass separately from the testis. So, these swellings are regarded as malignant and they are considered to be malignant and treated as such unless proved otherwise. Now, how do these diseases spread? They spread in a stepwise lymphatic fashion. That means they spread by lymphatic regions and they first drain into the draining basin. From there, they drain to the next level. Now, before that, imagine now this is the aorta. This is the common iliac. And this here is the inferior vena cava. Now, the inferior vena cava is present on the right hand side. So, the right testis will drain into the interaortocaval area. These lymph nodes here, they are actually para-aortic lymph nodes, but on the right side, they are present between the aorta and the inferior vena cava, which is why it is called the interaortocaval area. The left testis, it drains into the para-aortic area. Please note that the testicular tumors drain into the para-aortic lymph nodes and not into the pre-aortic lymph nodes. So, now what is the difference between pre and para-aortic? This is the aorta. The lymph nodes that are anterior to the aorta are called pre-aortic. The ones which are on either side of the aorta are called para. So, this is para, this is para, this is pre. Now, a peculiarity that is seen is that there is right to left crossover mets. That means the mets on the right hand side can go to the left hand side, but from left to right is never seen. The retroperitoneum is the most commonly involved site in metastatic disease. This is because the testis develops in the retroperitoneum below the kidneys in the embryo and it descends to the scrotum. Now, the most common mode of mets is the lymph. The second most common is blood-borne, that is hematogenous, and it goes to the lungs. Now, this image is taken from Bailey, this image over here, and it shows you the lymphatic drainage. Now, there is one thing which all students should always bear in mind, which is, I'll use a different color, which is that the testes, they drain into the para-aortic lymph nodes. they drained the paraaortic lymph nodes because these started developing in the retroperitoneal region in the abdomen. The testes were intra-abdominal during development. It is only as development progresses that they start descending, and by the time of birth, they are at the bottom of the scrotum. But on the other hand, the scrotal skin, so now this is the scrotal skin. This scrotal skin, it drains into the superficial inguinal lymph nodes. Now, what is the significance of this? The significance of this is two things. You should never ever use an FNAC. You should never ever use an FNAC to diagnose a testicular tumor. An FNAC is contraindicated. This is because if you do an FNAC, you will put seedlings of the tumor cells into the scrotal skin, which will then go and spread to the superficial inguinal lymph nodes, and you will inadvertently be upgrading the tumor. Likewise, you should never ever do, whenever you're doing an orchidectomy, you should never do a scrotal incision. Scrotal incision is not done for the same reason, because then there might be some amount of tumor implantation into the scrotal incision, which will then drain into the inguinal lymph nodes. Now, supposing the tumor spreads to the lungs, in the lungs you will get cannonball mets. These are cannonball mets, and I've, just for comparison sake, I've put a real picture of cannonballs. Now let us look at the tumors one by one. Seminoma, as I told you earlier, is a germ cell tumor, and seminoma is the most common tumor. So common that on one side you have seminoma, and on the other hand you have the non-seminomatous germ cell tumors. Now, as you can see in this figure 21.23, this is taken from Robbins. The seminoma is a homogeneous tumor. You can see you don't see any difference in parts of the tumor. This is homogeneous tumor, and it is actually a pinkish or cream. Basically, it looks like flesh. Now, this picture is of a preserved specimen, which is why it looks yellow. But if you take a fresh specimen, it looks pinkish or creamish in color. Now, if you'll notice over here, this is the testicular tissue, and it appears as though the testicular tissue has been compressed in the peripheries as the tumor expands. When you do a histopath of the seminoma, it looks like fried eggs. So you can see these cells over here with the clear cytoplasm, the small nuclei, and the prominent nucleoli. So these cells, they look like fried egg. I think the doctor who gave this name was probably hungry that day, which is why he called it fried eggs. Now, these tumors on histopath, you can also see a lymphocytic infiltrate. That is, the patient's immunity, the patient's lymphocytes start attacking the tumor. Now, this is a good sign. If there is a lymphocytic infiltrate on histopathology, it means the patient has a good prognosis. This is a good prognostic indicator. So there are two histological variants: spermatocytic seminoma, which has very good prognosis. This spermatocytic seminoma is nothing but a tumor of the maturing stages of the sperm. And you have anaplastic. Anaplastic has poor prognosis. Anaplastic is poorly differentiated. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. I'm sorry. If there's active lymphocytic infiltration, it means there's a good host response. Therefore, it has a better prognosis. METS is mainly via lymphatics, and hematogenous spread is uncommon. Next, we are looking at the non-seminomatous germ cell tumors. To reiterate the classification, you have testicular tumors into germ cell and interstitial cell tumors. Germ cell, you have seminoma and non-seminomatous germ cell tumors. These non-seminomatous germ cell tumors are again of a few types, which we'll be discussing. These NSGCTs, the size varies. It can either be very tiny or it can be as big as a coconut. Now, if it is tiny, the tunica albuginea may be intact. Now, to brush up, the testes has three layers. You have the tunica vasculosa, which is inside. Then you have the tunica albuginea. Then you have the tunica vaginalis. Now, sometimes this tumor is so small that even the albuginea is intact. But if it is large, it will no longer be intact. Now, non-seminomatous, the first type that we'll be looking at is an embryonal tumor. These are highly malignant and they may involve cord structures. A yolk sac tumor is the most common testicular tumor of infants and children. But Bailey says that teratomas are common in children, so there is some controversy over this. Now, these yolk sac tumors, they present as slow growing scrotal masses. They have a secondary hydrocele in only 1/4 of the cases. It is associated with a tumor marker which is called alpha fetoprotein, which is increased in more than 90%. Now, an interesting thing which is seen on histopath is embryoid bodies. So, when you look at this pink structure over here, this is the embryoid body, and this is also called Schiller-Duval bodies. Next is the choriocarcinoma. This has the worst prognosis because it is highly malignant. Since it is highly malignant, it metastasizes early and via both lymphatics and blood. So seminoma we had seen, it is more commonly via the lymphatics and uncommon by the blood. But choriocarcinoma, the first difference is that it metastasizes earlier than the other tumors, and it is by both lymphatics and blood. These features make it highly malignant. And choriocarcinoma is associated with a tumor marker which is HCG, that is human chorionic gonadotropin. Then next we have teratoma. Now, teratoma is most common in the prepubertal age group, but it can be seen till the third decade. That is, a patient in his 20s can still have a teratoma, but it is most commonly seen in a prepubertal age group. These teratomas are heterogeneous. This is in contrast to the seminomas, which were homogeneous. Now, as I show you a pic in the next slide, you'll understand what this homogeneous and heterogeneous means. It is heterogeneous, so it contains both solid and cystic components. A teratoma, as we've been studying since our second year pathology classes, it consists of all three layers. You have the ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. The parts of the tumor can range, the components of the tumor rather, it can range from mature, which are well differentiated structures, to immature, which are poorly differentiated structures. It is potentially malignant. This is the keyword, it is potentially malignant. Now, in this slide, we can see the meaning of heterogeneous. So, you can see this is the solid part, this is the solid part, this is the solid part. This is the solid part, this is the solid part, this is the cystic part. See, this is the cystic part. This is the meaning of heterogeneous tumor. These cysts, they contain gelatinous fluid. And these teratomas on cut section, they look yellowish in color. One point I had missed over here. Now, this is a very interesting point. The teratoma component of a metastatic germ cell tumor is resistant to CT and RT. So, let us see what this means. This is the right testis. This is the left testis. Now, sometimes we see a pure seminoma, but sometimes we'll see a mixed tumor in which there is a seminoma, and along with the seminoma, there is also another component, which is a non-seminomatous germ cell tumor like a teratoma. So this green thing is the seminoma, and this purple dot which I had drawn is the teratoma. Now, these metastasize to the lung. So let us draw the lungs. So when this spreads to the lungs, in the lungs, it spreads in both components. You have the seminoma and you have the teratoma. Now, what is important is that the seminoma is sensitive to chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So the seminoma will act on the chemotherapy and radiotherapy will act on the seminoma. So what this means is when this patient comes to you, you see that he has a tumor in the testis and he also has meds. So straight up you will do high inguinal orchidectomy. After doing high inguinal orchidectomy, you've removed the tumor in the testis. Then you also have to look after the tumor which has spread to the lungs. So in the lungs, he will have both a seminoma and a teratoma. So if you give chemotherapy or radiotherapy, that will destroy the seminoma, but it does not kill the teratoma component. So the teratoma component is resistant. This has important therapeutic implications because then you probably have to surgically excise that lesion because it does not respond to chemotherapy or radiotherapy. Now we have the second part of testicular tumors. We have the testicular tumors, we have the germ cell and interstitial cell tumors. These interstitial cell tumors are also called sex-cord stromal tumors. They can arise from either the cells of Leydig or they can arise from the Sertoli cells. Now, as you remember, when I discussed the histology, I told you that the Sertoli cells, the function of the Sertoli cells is to give nourishment to the spermatogonia. Now, this is similar, or rather, the way to remember this is when I was an infant, I was given nourishment by my mother. So, likewise, the Sertoli cell is giving nourishment to the spermatogonia. So, the Sertoli cells, it feminizes. The Leydig cells secrete testosterone, which is why it masculinizes. This is the mnemonic that I use so that I do not get confused. Now, when these interstitial cell tumors they can present either in a pre-pubertal age group or in a post-pubertal age group. The significance of this is that in a pre-pubertal age group, they have a higher proclivity of secreting androgens. If it secretes androgens, we will get sexual precocity or premature puberty. This means that the patient has he has a young boy, say 11 years or 10 or 11 years old. He's pre-puberty. Normally, that is a normal pre-puberty age, but in that patient, he is already hitting puberty. So his genitalia are big and developed. His body is masculine. He has a lot of body hair, and his voice is uncharacteristically heavy. Now, when this patient comes to you to the OPD and you want to look for a condition which can probably explain these symptoms of sexual precocity, you start doing a workup and you realize that it is because of a testicular tumor. So you tell the mother that look, there's a tumor in the testis, we'll have to remove the tumor, or we may have to do an orchidectomy. So the mother then asks, after you remove the tumor, after you do the orchidectomy, will these symptoms of sexual precocity, that is his very heavy voice, his facial hair, will it go away? Then you'll have to counsel the mother that no, these symptoms, regression of symptoms, it may be incomplete. Now, on the other hand,